Welcome to EUPrivacyForAll Session 51 on GDPR, Article 85, Processing and Freedom of Expression. Article 85 on Processing and Freedom of Expression and Information lays down that Member States shall, by law, reconcile the right to the protection of personal data with the right to freedom of expression and information, including processing for journalistic purposes and the purposes of academic, artistic, and literary expression. For processing carried out for journalistic purposes or the purpose of academic, artistic, or literary expression, Member States shall provide for exemptions or derogations, if they are necessary, to reconcile such rights. Each Member State shall notify to the Commission the provisions adopted. Beyond the key principles set in Article 85, Recital 153 underlines the fact that the processing of personal data in the audiovisual field and in new archives and press libraries should be framed specifically. The rights of the data subject, the controller and the processor, the transfer of personal data to third countries or international organizations, the independent supervisory authorities, cooperation and consistency, and specific data processing situations should be clarified. Where such exemptions or derogations differ from one Member State to another, the law of the Member State to which the controller is subject should apply. The notion related to the freedom of expression should be interpreted broadly. In Recital 65, the right to be forgotten and the right to freedom of expression are tackled. A data subject should have the right to have his or her personal data erased because of the right to be forgotten. But at the same time, however, the further retention of the personal data should be lawful where it is necessary for exercising the right of freedom of expression and information in a democratic society. The right to the protection of personal data is not an absolute right, and this is enhanced in Recital 4. It must be considered in relation to its function in society and be balanced with other fundamental rights, in accordance with the principle of proportionality. Article 17.3 raises a point that the right of the data subjects to ask for erasure of data shall not apply to the extent that the processing of personal data is necessary for exercising the right of freedom of expression and information. Directive 95/46 in Article 9 on the processing of personal data and freedom of expression states that Member States shall provide for exemptions or derogations regarding journalistic purposes or the purpose of artistic or literary expression, only if they are necessary to reconcile the right to privacy with the rules governing freedom of expression. What should accountable data controllers and processors get prepared for? Controllers and processors should bear in mind that the right to the protection of personal data pursuant to the GDPR and the right to freedom of expression and information will be framed and reconciled only by national laws and not at an EU level. Therefore, concretely, the processing of personal data for journalistic purposes, academic, artistic, or literary expression purposes will potentially be framed differently by each Member State. The set of exemptions and derogations to the GDPR will be declined in up to 27 countries. However, the European Commission will be notified the derogations adopted by each Member State. In case these exemptions or derogations differ from one Member State to another, the national law of the Member State to which the controller is subject will be applying. Freedom of expression exemptions should be interpreted broadly. Regarding the exercise of the right to be forgotten, the further retention of the data should be lawful where it is necessary for the right of freedom of expression and information in a democratic society. The question triggered now is how will supervisory authorities of all EU member states reconcile national exemptions and derogations with regard to the freedom of expression in a consistent way across EU, notably concerning the right to be forgotten.